Hi everyone, welcome to the BFI London Film Festival's Industry Programme. My name's Rowan Woods and I'm the festival's Industry Programmer. Thank you for joining us in this new online format this year. I hope you've all got used to navigating the platform at this point. So this is day 4 of the virtual industry programme, and before we start I just want to say thank you to Film London and the Mayor of London, who are the sponsors of the Press and Industry programme this year. We've had some great sessions and speakers over the past few days, including yesterday's brilliant and very sweary session with Jane Tranter from Bad Wolf, which is available for catch-up viewing on the PNI platform. Later this week, we'll be hearing from Ava DuVernay and her team at Array, producers Ed Guiney, Alan Reich and Liz Carlson about making the move into television, and Kemp Powers, screenwriter and co-director of Soul and screenwriter of One Night in Miami, will be in conversation with Kwame Kweyama. But in this session, we're going to hear from a group of smart thinkers from different sectors of the international industry who are going to reflect on the upheavals of the past 6 months and consider where the industry might go from here. A big question, I know, but one we hope to solve in 60 minutes. This session will be moderated by journalist and programmer Kaleem Aftab. It'll last 60 minutes and there'll be an opportunity at the end for questions. So just pop any questions in the Q&A box. I know you all know where that is by now. Before I hand over to Kaleem, just to say that closed captions are available for this session. And if you'd like to access those, you'll find a button on the Zoom tab at the bottom of your screen. We're recording this session and it will be available for catch-up viewing from tomorrow evening. Thanks so much. Enjoy. Kaleem, over to you.
Hi everyone, my name's Kaleem. Thank you, Rowan, for the introduction. So I'd like to start by describing the panel, which is, as a response, it's called Where Do We Go From Here? And it's a response to the profound effect and long-lasting, possibly, impact that COVID has on the film business. Changes that were hitherto incremental have been accelerated overnight. We've also had the Black Lives Matter movement, which has prompted uncomfortable reckoning on the back of the Me Too. So as the industry moves forward with lockdown still seemingly not an end, we on this panel have got together some smart thinkers from the international film community to reflect on the past 6 months, but more to talk about what the future may be. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Tabitha Jackson, who's the director of the Sundance Film Festival, Anna Serner, the CEO of the Swedish Film Institute, producer Ted Hope, and Berenice Vincent, who's co-founder of Totem Films, a sales agent in Paris. Hi, everyone. Oh, just wait for Berenice. There we are. Excellent. Hi, everybody. So I think I'm just going to open just by allowing you to introduce yourselves a little bit and also to talk about how the last 6 months have affected you and what's been the significant shifts that you've noticed, and how COVID has maybe directly affected your work. I'm going to start with Tabitha Jackson, please.
Thanks, Kaleem. Yeah, I'm the director of the Sundance Film Festival. I was handed the keys to this glorious, smooth-running machine in February. And in March, a global pandemic hit the States. It had been going on before. And so this thing of this brilliant idea of gathering 120,000 people in a small mountain town during flu season no longer seems such a great idea. So the last 6 months for me has been about, rather than thinking, I must not break the festival, I must not break the festival, thinking, how can I smash the festival wide open and see what might come out the other side? I think the most dramatic thing, the pandemic is the backdrop to everything. The most dramatic thing, I think, was the uprising. It has changed so much. We are being held to account and calling ourselves to account as an organization and as an industry in a way that we haven't done before, I think, with the intensity and the scrutiny that hasn't been there before. So it's both a kind of terrifying moment and an incredibly liberating one. Again, to the theme of this panel, what's going to come out the other end of it?
Thank you so much. I'll get back to that and you on that, Tabitha. That was great. And Anna Serner, CEO of Swedish Film Institute. We chatted earlier this year. And that seems like a long time ago, even though it was only in May or June.
Yeah, in June, actually. Well, yeah. Well, you know, we started off the 50-50 by 2020 movement in 2016, and we were supposed to gather all the happenings during 2020, going around the world talking about gender equality, inclusive work, and getting a new sort of skyline for what film can be and what stories can be told. And someone took that year away from us. So here we are and trying to keep that movement going on anyways. I mean, this time for me as a public funder has been very, actually, a kind of a revolution, because being a public funder, and in Sweden that means that we are the most important funder for film, and that has usually meant that everyone has been looking at us and just wanting the money from us. But in this moment where the pandemic hit everything, for the first time ever, I think that the industry has really met on the same level. There has been a new kind of conversation that has been kind of amazing, actually, where we as a public funder have been looked upon not only as someone you can claim money from, but as a conversation partner and someone that has information from all sides of the world, of the film world. And that has been very interesting. Of course, it's due to the business solution that has been ripped off everyone. So it's sad for the industry that they have to start to talk because of that, but I think that there can come out something new out of this. And I think that this conversation as well has been much more listening and much more sensitive of what we have actually done that we want to change. Everyone is looking for a change, I believe. And that goes as well actually for the gender equality and the inclusive work. Black Lives Matter blew off in the middle of the pandemic, and you could have believed that should have taken some other direction because everyone was occupied by the pandemic. But I really believe that everyone tried to and could keep two thoughts going on at the same time. So I'm kind of actually looking quite positively into the future. And I hope that we will come with a common, joint, positive end of this hour.
Wonderful. And going on to TED, there are interesting themes that they've talked about, because there's been themes of commercial imperatives and new commercial realities, as well as new political, whether it's race or gender realities. Yet for producers, I guess one of the questions is, where do we even go from here? Is there even a future? What does that look like? And obviously you were working for Amazon for the last few years, with streamers have been a big player in this debate. What's the last 6 months been like for you?
You know, in some ways, like, I guess like the easiest way to answer that, because it's actually a really difficult question, is how's it actually compared to the last 35 years, right? You know, and that, you know, in some ways, when I first entered the business, what everyone always said is like, it's a total shitstorm. Everything's changing. We're in total transformation. I think that happens every single year, but I think this year is finally for real, right? It's actually happening. I can only look at myself, but I think what we see is really the ramification of all of us doing too little too often. You know, of the slow drip of change has kind of finally blown our heads off, right? In a good way. That I think we see real ramifications and true potential for cultural change. The main thing I think that has been happening to our industry for the last 7 years or so has solidified, in that there's been a total transfer of power from the studio business and theatrical business to the global streamers, and that has huge ramifications. I think we can see the, like one of the things for me, just like in that, I gave notice to Amazon at the beginning of the year. I had felt kind of the two poles of needing to be around people who truly just loved what they did and loved cinema. I had missed that. I had had a chance to go back to New York in the end of last year and be around friends who loved cinema, which isn't to say that folks at my company hadn't, but like that's what they were driven by. And I was like, I need to do that again. And there was clear indications, I think, that we have a really wonderful time ahead for filmmakers and producers, and I wanted to be part of that. But when COVID hit, it became so clear for me that that was such a more, beckoning place, something I wanted to be part of. And it was only maybe 2 or 3 weeks in that I said to them that, I know we talked that this might just be a full year so I could help with the films that we had started, but I think I should get out of here now. And they were only too happy to comply. But in doing so, like the conversations that I've been having, like I literally have been close to ecstasy. That's the feeling, not anything else. I've been so close to it on a regular basis, both in talking to folks who are, looking at the opportunities for a new indie film ecosystem, for folks that are looking at new creator methods to kind of comply with it, really wanting to address a total film ecosystem change and the cultural trends that will both drive it and result from it. Like, it's super exciting. And I really do feel we are on the verge of probably the best time for filmmakers that we've ever had of my 35 years. So I see real positive things coming from it.
Oh, wow. That's a much more positive spin than even I was expecting. So that brings me
My
nicely
name is
on.
Hope, after all, right?
Brings me nicely onto Berenice, who obviously in January you had a film, Luxor, that was at Sundance. We're going to sell it this year. I imagine you had a whole festival plan, a strategy. Did that just go out the window? How did your last 6 months look with your slate of films?
Okay, here we go. Do you hear me? Okay. Well, yes, we did have Luxor, and we also had Gagarin during this first virtual market, actually. So being a sales agent, when travel became complicated, is quite something, I must say. We had a very lucky, not only lucky, hopefully, but a very interesting experience regarding Gagarin during the Cannes virtual market. And I agree with the fact that basically we are on a very special moment. And yes, for example, I heard my father during the last 38 years saying that the world is going to collapse. And maybe actually, in a way, it's happening right now. Hopefully not a full collapse, but things will definitely change at some point right now. So there are many things that are being very interesting at the moment. Regarding the place of theatrical, because, for example, France is a very particular territory for that. We recently had many local successes. So the question of the dependence on American cinema is something quite interesting nowadays. then of course, I mean, it will not be fully interesting for the exhibition sector without the American movies. But I mean, you can see really, really interesting numbers for some French movies. That's something. But at the same time, the platforms actually gain so much power during the quarantine. So this is, I mean, there are many reflections that are possible right now. I think no one knows what will happen, but we are all very curious. And the question, I mean, talking about crisis, real topic, important topic, like, I mean, Anna knows that we're fighting on the question of gender since many years together, actually. So the question of gender and diversity, I mean, thanks God, people are speaking up. And this is something very important. It would be a game changer regarding the vision of the world we're transmitting throughout our films as well.
And have you seen a different in appetite? You spoke about the streamers previously. It's not something that's new, that's been caused because cinemas have been forced to close. There's been a long conversation that seems to be going on for a number of years. The streamers have the power, that the possibilities for independent films are so limited now. It's either...
Well, there is appetite for, I mean, there is appetite for great stories and great vision of the world. I mean, what the beauty of cinema is unexpected, actually. So there is nothing that you can of course see that there is a real mise en scène, a real director, but then, I mean, the question of, I mean, of course there are algorithms regarding what kind of stories, genre, blah, 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 they all have audiences, but at some point, the unexpected is arriving, and that is beautiful. And we saw that with, I mean, Gagarin had a very strong storytelling, especially regarding, I mean, the confinement, because it's really something about the solidarity and about human being fighting together in a way. And at the same time, there was a high level of cinema. So the appetite was there. What became different is that we were the lucky one to have an independent film, both in like more than 35 territories. But honestly, I think we were the only one during Cannes. There was like Sweat as well, which had some nice sales, but the market became more violent, basically, because there is a question, and I'm very curious to hear Tabitha and Ted on that as well. The question of some independent player being actually curators regarding their choice of movies. You have some distributors, and we know them, when they take the risk to basically say, this one, I want this film. Basically, they bring other people with them on board very easily. And that became more and more violent during the Cannes virtual market, actually. Violent in a good sense, in a good sense for us, but on a global level, it's another question.
And does either Ted or Tabitha want to respond to that? Did you find that?
Ted, I'm going to defer to you.
I think that it's absolutely true that there will be far greater demand for bold visions, that also bold visions that aren't trying to please everybody, but have a direct relationship to particular affinity groups. But a lot of that you can drill back. Like, I think it's super useful to look at what are the big changes and then try to see what they will then result in, because I like to go to the ultimate big change of this transfer of power, right? When I went to work at Amazon 5.5 years ago, I thought I had about a 2-year lead time to kind of really, jump into the green fields of where there were opportunity for distinction in a, content strand, let's say, before the competition got intense, right? And it's only now that we're actually entering the streaming wars, right? It's just right now. And that you have to remember, Amazon, the #2 global streamer, it was only this year, 2020, a year of so many colossal changes. This seems like such a small one, but it's only this year that Amazon released its first homegrown movie, a project we developed, that they released simultaneously on a global basis with an adequate marketing budget, right? That was a film that was closing night the year before at the Sundance Film Festival by filmmakers Bert and Birdie, called Troop Zero, right? And what's really unique about that is previously it was only tentpoles and franchise films and family films that had the opportunity to a simultaneous global release, right? Now it's open to all different strands and audiences and demographics. And we're still in an early stage, right, where we don't yet know how to unleash that power of affinity groups worldwide. Even though we have, and we're, good, 12, 15 years in to using social media, we still don't know how to fully exploit the two-way channel of communication that's there, right? So now everyone can reach a global audience. And it's reached this point where we've been slowly moving to some form of competition. In a lot of ways, you could look at COVID as probably strengthened Netflix in particular, because the competition that was promised kind of stumbled and fell and got off to a slow start from the other companies. But right now, there are 6 global streaming services, and they're all US based and English language dominant, right? I hope the rest of the world's not going to stand for that, and we will soon have 6 other global streaming platforms that are there. Tremendous demand for content, right? You can go into that and we should talk about what that is, but we've never seen anything like that, right? And in that demand for content, a lot of people are going to make the decision to first go for the easy, low-hanging fruit. What appeals to the most number of people at any time, right? Let's just go ahead and make another, horror movie or like whatever. Nothing against it. I love horror movies too, but like a lot of people will make those easy choices, as opposed, which will soon say, oh, great, we have 50 new low-budget horror films available this week all over the world. Somebody will wake up and start to say, hey, we need to actually distinguish ourselves amongst that pack. And the way to do that is these bold visionary work that will make certain people ignite with passion and use social media to talk about what's there, right? I think that we will see folks who will say, like, absolutely, we need more films like that and less films that feel like everything else and kind of a mass market corporate stamp.
I love that, Ted, and I love your, you are indeed well named. And I really wish that to be the case. I genuinely do. I wonder, for the independent sector, for filmmakers with bold visions nevertheless, who want to keep their work independent, kind of free for as long as it can be before it hits distribution and hopefully gets injected into the cultural mainstream. We had this thing which was deeply imperfect, the little ecosystem where, and I come from nonfiction documentary, where you would scrabble together small amounts of money over the course of years to make the piece that you wanted to make, that was your voice, and you retained a degree of creative control over it. That ecosystem seems to have been exploded. So even though there is an amazing demand from the streamers for content, which is the fucking problem, it's not content. It's content for them. For somebody else, it is a distinctive work. It's a film, it's a story, it's whatever. Do you have as much optimism for that kind of work and that way of, it is how it's financed. It's not just where it goes. And for me, that's the concern. I just wondered how you felt about that. Sorry to a long question.
Yeah. May I? Can I answer that? Okay. I think you're absolutely right. The methods of production and the methods of exhibition heavily influence the nature of what work gets made and who gets to see it. No doubt about it. And let's be clear, like when we say like this time it's for real, I wish there was a word that was more graphic and horrifying than shitstorm, because that's a little bit of what we will have to walk through, right? And that, like, let's just do that quick experiment, right? We saw in the States today and elsewhere, AMC saying that they don't know if they'll have cash come the end of the year, right? Clearview is shut down, different theater chains across the world. Who's going to get hurt? First, that's going to be the mid-level films, right? The real indie and international films already are relegated in the States to the independent art house circuit. Wonderful places, made efforts at getting organized, but they work independently, truly independently, and it gives them challenge in terms of how they actually can connect deeply with an audience. There's interesting things afoot there that gives me a lot of hope too, but that's already afoot. That's going, same thing internationally is going to happen, right? So what we're going to see is the mid-level distributors in the States and the territorial distributors in the world start to collapse, right? It's going to be catastrophic, right? That's going to happen, right? And as a result, the international sales companies are going to have their business tremendously hurt, right? That's also going to happen. And as a result, the one thing that really gave America independent a distinguishing factor, because we didn't actually ever have a government that truly cared about one of the most dynamic business sectors there are, the arts industry, right, and neglected it. Instead, we developed a very robust private equity market, right? But they couldn't fully finance films above, say, let's say a $3 million price point, you know, unless they were someone like Jeff Bezos, you know, like no one had that kind of cash, right? So they depended on the foreign sales market and the international subsidies to have this really robust cultural industry that was always willing to take chances on outlier voices, right? How do we preserve those outlier voices? Because inside a corporate environment, you always fall into a house style, right? The things that are appropriate, because really what is the film business? The business is about people keeping their jobs, and that means they don't take risks, which means they don't champion those visionary voices that we all love, right? So how do you keep something going to be able to remind us, as this time has, that we make a lot of mistakes, that the nature of being human is to make mistakes, and we err over and over again, but luckily brave souls create unique, distinct voices that then can't be ignored, right? And it's precisely that long time plan. What happens when that private equity goes away, when the international sales business goes away, and we're stuck with a model that is primarily focused around full finance for global rights and all of the people in this huge infrastructure that we built to champion outlier voices? Where does that all go, right? That's the horrible, worse than a shitstorm. Yeah, I'll pause here, Anna. Go for it.
Yeah, I couldn't find the port to raise my hand, but in Sweden at least, and I think that we are in a different state than, for instance, the US, as we have public funding systems. But what I can see is that the lack of content, which they are saying, everyone started believing that then they would go for documentaries and they would go for finding qualitative films that we know a lot of people really want to see. So all the documentaries in Sweden that are doing international co-productions, for instance, they were waiting for deals to be made with these streamers. And it hasn't happened. It's like everyone is holding their breaths in belief that this will go away. And what we have been talking about in Sweden is that everyone is starting to look at 2022, 2023, and wondering, where are we going to meet our audience? And suddenly everyone has films that they are not willing to release without having a premiere in cinemas because they want reviews and everything. But suddenly they have no options because they are already, like you say, Tabitha, they are in a very long process. So they are already in year 5 of their next film and they just can't wait. So what I can sense is that they are now really having innovative new thoughts. And I think that that will be so interesting to see, because the cinemas in all countries, even though they're now opening in places, we can all see that the audience is still reluctant to go because you're afraid that you will get the disease anyways. And so they are waiting for the big premieres, the big studio productions, and the big studio productions wants the audience, and they're still not releasing the documentaries in the cinemas because they are just not making decisions. And I think that they can keep on doing that for a short while longer. But as you say, there will be a catastrophe for the middle films, middle distributors that just can't do that. And suddenly there will be an open window. And there will be people that have the audience. The first and foremost, now they have realized the money is gone for this film. Now I'm just going to go for the audience, and maybe that can make a new way for the documentaries, but as well for other art house films. Yeah, so that is just very interesting.
I saw Berenice put her hand up, but I'm going to come back to you afterwards, Anna.
Yes, regarding the question of, I mean, I agree with you, Ted. Actually, I think the international sales business is going to be very tough in the upcoming months and years. But then there is the question of what is basically international sales. If you see that as, in a way, an international curation, that is basically seeing the creativity, finding the talents, then creating actually alliances with independent companies from the production to the exhibition. That is something different. Of course, everyone has to get closer to the creation. That is something that is inevitable. But at the same time, the global streamers, and of course there will be more in the upcoming months and years, but they won't buy everything, and they do not know how to editorialize really, truly the films. At some point, they can do it sometimes, but not always. So you need to have, as you say, bold vision, distinctive vision, and also bold people and distinctive people bringing those visions to the world. And you also need to have filmmakers and producers and distributors and sales business, international curators, let's say, becoming more political in a way. That is to say that the filmmakers, I mean, when you see the move of Michaela Coel with Netflix saying, no, I won't go there actually, because there is no transparency, because basically I want to be interested to the success. That is something super important. And I think we all need to fight to bring the risk back in the chain, but in a more transparent way. When there is success, then everyone basically gets a piece of it. And that's how we need to take risk. Sorry.
If I may, just one thing that you just said there, Bernice, that I think is so right. And what we as a film industry, all of us together really do need is we need to get together. We have to decide what we really want, and we have to build that roadmap to utopia, right? You know, like, it's possible. We've neglected doing that time and time again. And I think we really need to do it. Like, I personally feel like that sort of process is what we all need to do with our lives. We need to really kind of break it down and define what we want and stop settling for what we get, which is the best way to describe what the film industry is, what the ecosystem is. You know, I fall back on this time and time again, the white hair syndrome from Alice in Wonderland, where the rabbit said, you know, I like what I get, but everybody interpreted it as I get what I like. And we don't get what we like, but we could, and we have to rebuild it towards what that is. That I absolutely think that there is a new film ecosystem, an independent ecosystem that is built on it, that even in the way that Anna, you know, spoke about filmmakers having to say, there isn't a sale, we're going to go to the audience now and we'll see, it can be incredibly transformative and supportive for a film. We have to recognize, we actually, particularly when it comes to documentaries, we are sitting on the biggest glut of exceptional work of quality that has not found a place into the marketplace. Sundance sales cycle, right? Because Sundance is not in the States very much, it's not just a festival. It is the top market we have in America, you know, for film product. Did not have reached its end of its cycle. There were wonderful movies that would have found a home in a previous year that didn't find a home. But also that's a huge opportunity for those that want to take advantage of it, because for the first time, you have such a huge supply of films, people could actually look and find titles that align to each other in different ways that are about building an audience. That way that we spoke about, you know, activated affinity groups who actually start to support work. The streamers, the platforms will never address curation and discovery, because it's the opposite of their business goals. When we talk about the difference of this transformation, we have to look at what the business goals are. The exhibition studio-driven work was about revenue, is single title revenue. That was the main driver of everything that worked. The global streaming platforms is something completely different. That business model, like as Tabitha was saying, will also lead to a different type of product if we're not careful and if we don't say where we want to go and build that roadmap, you know, to it. The global streaming platforms is about attention. It's a portfolio play for audience acquisition, right? And that is a completely different business model, because what will bring somebody to a platform? Unfortunately, it's just simply the new, the familiar and the new. And if you're not careful as creators and business leaders and curators, what that is a downward pull to mediocrity. That's where we can end up if we're not careful. I think it's totally easy to overcome. Well, not easy. We have to be passionately involved and work really hard, but it is doable, right? But when we look at the change of power, we also have to look at what those change of business goals are. And in those things that seem negative, I think a tremendous opportunity to build a different sort of ecosystem that actually could reward the creators, because that's the other problem that simply comes with a change in those business goals. If your business is about audience acquisition, that's what you don't want to share with your creators who help you develop that audience acquisition. The streaming platforms will never give performance-based bonuses, right? And that performance-based bonus, the reward that was supposed to be complement your risk, is what drove both independent money, equity financing into the sector, and it also created a drive, an incentive for the artists and the entrepreneurs to aim for excellence, to actually get something that worked with the audience, not just with their vision themselves. And without that, I wonder sometimes, how do we make sure we don't go for a bloated, self-satisfied, everything smells like roses if it comes from me attitude.
Oh, wow. I'm fascinated to see what Anna and Tabitha have to say about curation and discovery at this moment, in combination with keeping ongoing the fight, obviously, Anna, with gender that you did with 2020. Tabitha mentioned the importance of the Black Lives Matter movement. How do we fight, and what Ted has just been talking about, so that we still get discovery, curation, and also tackle the institutional problems that have been well documented in recent years. Anna, first.
Okay, well, I think that as a public funder, we have a unique position, of course, to look above and beyond the business model if we are brave and if we have a good conversation with the industry. Because of course the industry in Sweden are very keen on making money to survive, and we can't be the only financier, but we have a tremendous responsibility, I think, and I think that goes for the festivals as well, that have the opportunity to find films and voices and stories that are not only the commercial ones. And I think that we need really to keep up that work. And I'm actually really happy about how I think that the conversation is going, because during this time, just the other week, I was chopped off my head by one of the biggest Swedish newspapers saying I'm only talking about gender equality and diversity. Can you please talk about quality? And I got so tremendously many SMSs and mails saying, you don't care about that. You know that we think that we are actually doing quality, and that this work of the inclusive work is actually making quality. So we in Sweden, which was amazing, we just got quite a lot of money for the film industry, for the whole ecosystem to survive from the state, and we are the body to distribute it. And of course there will be a fight over the money, but when we have said that the most important things that we believe that we have to take care of now is partly how the productions that are ongoing or in close green lighting, that they actually gets the money to be finalized and to be in production, because that gives a lot of other people jobs, because everyone's are freelancers, so the money keeps on rolling out. And then we need to make sure that the films reaches an audience. And of course that includes the festivals, the cinemas, and the distributors. And of course, at this point, everyone is agreeing. And then we have said that we really need to take care of the next generation. Because in times of crisis, it's the establishment that have the loudest voices, have the productions that are now in the verge of having a green light or being finalized. And we, of course, all the time tend to make sure that the establishment gets the money to survive. And that would make that we don't have a new generation, and we don't get the creativity in from keeping on the work of inclusion. And when we have said that to the Swedish film industry, which obviously the media haven't picked up, everyone is agreeing. And they say, yeah, you take money for the next generation, and we have to make sure that we give power and voices to people that didn't have it before. And that goes for not only women, people of color, but also people of low classes that are far away from being privileged middle class people close to the film schools. And everyone understands and everyone agrees, even though they're fighting for their lives. And that's why I'm so positive, because I've been working with these questions for quite a few years now, and I've met so much resistance. And then suddenly now, I don't do that. And I think it's because everyone realizes there is a power here. And we need that power, because going back to what we had is not an option. So yeah, that's my take on it. I don't know about you, Tabitha.
I I was applauding loudly from within my small white room. No, I totally agree with you. And I think this word that's come up a lot from you and from Ted is power. And that's what it's coming. I feel bad that we're still having to deal with these conversations about quality versus inclusion. It's just, actually now it's just like, we haven't got time for that shit anymore. We don't have to have that conversation anymore. There is work to be done. The work, sorry, that was a bit rude, but the work to be done is recentering and redistributing power. And power can be resources, real estate, amplification. And that means that some people will need to cede power. It's not an infinite resource. And some people need to relinquish power. Some institutions will need to relinquish power if they are not built for the society we want to be a part of. Anna, you said at the beginning about there was the pandemic and the uprising, and people were able to hold the two thoughts at once, which I totally agree with. And further, they're not two thoughts, they're all the same thing. Particularly in the US, who is dying in the greatest numbers? It is the people who have been overlooked by our industry or willfully kept out. Everything is connected. And so this is why this great moment of accountability, this great age of reckoning, will and should affect all of us. And so, yes, from the perspective of a festival, discovery is so key, but not just as a lovely thing to have. Oh, I just discovered this new filmmaker. It's about who is crafting, and we see this in the political cycle in the US now, who is crafting the narratives? Who is crafting the narratives that will actually determine our future, whether they are authentic, honest, accurate narratives, or whether they're complete propaganda. So who's got the control of those, the methods of production for those narratives? And the stakes are fantastically high. So finding, looking, noticing sites of collective power, making sure that the work can be done actually without big institutions, just ensuring that the work can be made, the critiques can be made. A friend of ours, Michael Primo, always talks about every story is either reinforcing a dominant narrative or challenging it. Which ones are we in danger of losing? How can we keep them going? How do we, if we need to get out of the way to allow them to happen, that's what we must do. But there's such energy around this, and it goes, as we're all saying, I think, every point of the industry chain, the ecosystem, the creative process, and the civic process. It's all one thing, and the stakes are high. So it's been, I can't wait to see what questions we might get from our patient audience, but Ted has
exactly. I was going to remind people that you can definitely ask questions within the Q&A box, and feel free to. But I'm also intrigued because you've said with Sundance, you have a position of power. It's such a great global brand. How do you envisage using that and the changes ahead, and what changes can we expect to see when Sundance eventually comes up?
Well, I pretty unapologetically say there is nothing expected in this moment. So one of the great things about being able to break open the festival and just try different things, many of which will fail, some of which will work and act as a light forward. That's when, for me, that's when I will see what we want the festival to be in 22, 23, 24. This year, I'm very excited to just try lots of stuff. And so in a sense, this year is thrilling, but the following years will be interesting, because that's going to be the mission. This great rupture that we've been through is allowing things to exist that couldn't have existed before, ideas, aspirations, values to express themselves in a way. So if there were to be something expected from this moment, it would almost be disappointing, because it means we're not going far enough. However, reach, accessibility, equity, more collegiality with our other festival friends, all of those things, I can't imagine going backwards on those. But yeah, watch this space for that.
Ted, sure.
Yeah, I'd like to echo some of what Tabitha said there. Like it, to me, like one of the first steps on that roadmap to utopia is, a willingness to iterate, to make mistakes and try and revise. Because I think we've made a lot. And to me, that's one of the things that gives me like so much hope in it, is the colossal size of the mistakes that were made, right? When you talk through the transfer of power, it's because people were asleep at the wheel, right? We got stuck in a fetishization of the status quo almost, where the people in charge, believe that they could stay in charge by some of the things that are going to come back to bite them later, in that they felt that, well, the film business, the entertainment business, you can't actually control the creators of the IP, right? So if we want to dominate, what we need to do is have more money, more capital, and more distribution, and the studios will last forever, right? But they got caught in an old belief of what those words meant, right? That the distribution wasn't the physical movement of prints around the globe, and why they had to, when it was, that's why it was only tentpoles and family films and franchises that got that. Right now, it's digital distribution. Capital wasn't the amount of money that the studios had, which was colossal. It's the amount of money that the FANG companies, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google have, which can buy any of the studios that have yet to transform, as Disney did today, right? Disney said today, we are no longer prioritizing theatrical exhibition. We are platform agnostic, right? So what more do you need to represent that today, while we're doing this panel, they changed to that, right? So that, those two things, but they totally neglected the third and biggest thing. And this is why we will also have finally a cultural change to go alongside the business change that is warranted, right? They always neglected the fact they were willing to allow there to be a whole industry of middle people that would work to take fees in between every sort of thing. People that would get in the way of their relationship with the audience, with the customers. They did not know who they are, right? So now we arrive in this era of access and abundance, right? Where we sit in our homes. Sorry, the sun is, you get the morning light of Los Angeles with me right now. Who would sit in their homes and go onto a platform, and what do they see? They see what 120 years of cinema has delivered. Maybe like 60 different stories that are told from slightly different perspectives. But generally, the people that make those films, who are in front of the camera or behind the camera, look like me, right? They're white, straight men of getting older in their years, that come from the West and come from some form of privilege. That's who all of this great abundance of cinema was generated from, right? But they also get to see who's watching it and who the customers are. And if we'd say, okay, Ted, you exaggerate, it's only maybe 40% or 50%, we know that's not true, that come from your background. The audience is well bigger than that. That's different and diverse, right? Forget about the political or social needs for diversity and inclusion. The streamers see the absolute imperative of the business needs for access and inclusion and diversity, right? That's who their customers are. And the other piece of that I think is just so super exciting is the majority of them aren't in the US anymore, right? We've talked about those 6 platforms are all American-based, English language dominant, but the customers are all over the world. There's going to be this huge demand for authentic local language voices from all over the world. And if you go back to like only a year and a half ago or a year ago, I don't think I knew anyone that had watched a non-English language series that wasn't someone that called themselves a cinephile. Now, everyone I know has watched non-English language series. They're addicted to them. They want that. And we're going to see that audience demand to say that not only do I need people who look like me, starring in the films. Not only do I need people who look like me making those films, but I don't really care anymore where they're set or what the language is. And with that, they'll, you know, already we're at a very high level of media literacy that I don't think we actually acknowledge with our audience members. They're super smart and they can be super engaged in a wide variety of storytelling styles, you know, but we're going to see that rise. And with that, I think not only we get the diversification of creators and stars, finally, we will also reach an end of, frankly, Western colonial imperialism of movies, right? Of stories, right? Like we have a very dogmatic way of telling films, right? That don't deal with the wide range of cultural histories that we have. And we're going to see that also overturned. And I think we've already seen the seeds, but I think we'll see it in a much bigger way, because frankly, people won't put up with it. The customers will demand something better.
Boom.
This is really full of hope. I'm going to come back to that, but I want to go to a couple of questions that we've had thrown open. And one is about the globalized nature of the film business. Tim Dams has asked, following on from the Black Lives Matter and Me Too campaigns, we've heard a lot about that in the UK and the US. He's wondering, what's the situation in France and Sweden? So Berenice touched upon it a little bit, so if you carry on, and then Anna can wheel in afterwards.
Well, France is a beautiful country, thinking that we are so much advanced and modern and very open-minded about this question, but it's not the case, absolutely not. I mean, you might have followed the question of the César. Roman Polanski is still in the board, actually. So, well, I mean, the Me Too movement had an impact, of course, for the short story, because Anna knows that per heart, actually. But I created an organization called Le Deuxième Regard. It was in 2013. Then after the Me Too movement, it became the collective 50-50, which make actually the March of the 82 Women in Cannes. Among others initiatives, we actually did many. So there is a real lobby group which does have an impact politically right now in France, but then you can see that we're going backwards on many moments. For me, what's very important is to have the numbers always, to keep following the numbers of the place of women. I mean, for example, our company does have like maybe, I would say maybe 85% women director. And this is something we're conscious about and we do care about. And then it's, I mean, many people thought that we had no male directors. Actually, we do. And we had a Swedish one, Anna knows him, Levanakin, for example. So there are the numbers. Then there is a question of having people who really truly care about this question of gender diversity, be part of the conversation, of the creation. And those are, I mean, totally linked together, but also separate, because there is a question of the content and the question of the representativity and the numbers. And of course, they go together as well. But France is a very complicated territory regarding this question, because France is the supposed to be territory of freedom of speech, and they are mixing that up with many other questions, and very awkwardly. So there are some movements. Adèle Haenel definitely helped the movement, but it's taking time, and the mentalities will change, hopefully, but it will definitely take a long time.
And on Black Lives Matter in France?
Black Lives Matter actually had an impact because there was a very important fight coming up by Assa Traoré, and thanks to the Black Lives Matter movement, it really had like finally a big echo politically in France.
I'm wary of time, so I might just try and jump in and get Anna to answer this within a question that's also been thrown at Ted, which is, what is the hope of streamers ever giving us this data that we're all hearing that's used, talks about streamers using, that will broaden the audience to know that greater diversity will result in better profits?
Well, I actually don't know, but I think that inevitably they will just have to. And I think that Berenice just said it in the beginning, in your first remark, that we need to start a new business model which is transparent. And I think that that will come, and we just all have to push for it. But I think I'm a little bit too far away from the negotiations, so I don't know how far they have come, but what I hear is that they say themselves another year.
I don't think it will ever come unless there's government intervention, right? The data should be owned by the people that generate it, which is the creators, that you should be attached to the data that your film generates, whatever that is, and you should have full access to it. There's no business incentive. It's really a counter business incentive of the global streamers to provide for that. Unless there's government intervention, that won't happen. And that's not going to happen in the States. So Europe, Latin America, Asia has to take the lead on that, you know, if that's going to happen.
Okay, so we do that.
And so I'm going to wrap this up, but I have one kind of last question that's to all of you, which is, so far, despite everything you're saying, I'm noticing that a lot of the conversation we're hearing is about studios not sending films to festivals or cinemas closing. How do we keep the filmmakers at the heart of this conversation?
I could start with that, I suppose. That I think that the piece, you know, when you step off of what will be these streaming wars, and let's just say 12 global streamers as a nice round number will emerge, you know, and their goals are customer acquisition, speed and quantity becomes their first priorities. How do we move fast to get those customers, and how do we supply enough movies right away to win that game? And we can go through the logic, but it's kind of common sense, where you can see the minimum number of films any of those 12 streamers will want will be 50, and some will be twice as much. That's 50 per year, new titles. Some will want twice as much. Some will want 3 times as much. So all of a sudden, we're up to a demand for 800 movies, right? And that's not even taking into account what was the old ecosystem, right? How the hell are they going to service those films and be able to supervise them and get as many as they need as fast as they want? We know that they won't be able to manage them to excellence, right? That will be up to the filmmakers and their collaborators, you know, to kind of deliver what that is. But there's going to be huge needs for that. And it's precisely that reason that I have so much hope, because that alone, for at least, you know, 2 or 3 years, that lack of supervision will be what was like the Hollywood studios in the 70s, where they let the inmates run the asylum, and we got some of the best cinema we ever had. And then those titles were all driven by an incredibly prejudiced, biased system that hopefully is going to be withering away now. So just think of what that flowering of voices are. And I think that question is that what filmmakers want to ask is, in a world of opportunity, how do I make sure that I have my direction in place to deliver what matters to me, matters to my values, the quality that I want, engage with others? And I think that also leads us to back to some of the things that were mentioned today, new communities of affinity where we are working together to make something better. And I think that you know, when we all get together again to build that roadmap to utopia, we'll start to see that it will be these pods that we've seen happen already, whether it was, you know, Athena Sangari and Yorgos Lanthimos in Greece, you know, who said we're not working within the state system, we're delivering movies for a younger audience, taking more bold visions, or La Joie in France with Les Miserables. We'll start to see people who come together and are willing to work in a different manner to particularly address the audiences that matter most to them.
I just wanted to pick up and jump on that. I think that what you're talking about, Ted, of course, is independence. And we need to rebuild a system that empowers and facilitates independence. I don't want the creators needing to be dependent on whether their product is what the streamers need. I want them to be able to make the work that they want to make. I want festivals to amplify it and allow it to be discovered and bought and commodified and then actually taken to large audiences everywhere for that cultural impact. But I think what we want to enable from our positions is an expansion of the market after the work has been discovered, rather than the market determining whether the work and the creators can be made and sustained.
If I can just add.
Oh, Ted, very quickly, very fast.
I think that what Tabitha is saying is so possible. Like that, you know, a lot of, I think what is being touched upon here is decentralized ways of working, where the old all-inclusive media licensing, the old long-term in perpetual term licensing, the old windowing and how we're staggered can no longer be supported. And I think that there are real opportunities, and with that, we will build a new indie ecosystem. I think it looks much different than what it used to look before, but I think it's entirely doable, and it's just, you know, good minds saying we're going to work together.
And Anna, I'm intrigued to see what you see.
Well, I hope that as we that have the power positions have let the new voices come through, the power of their voices will automatically create a new independence world, because they will demand new things, and we don't know what all these new people will demand and how the audience will see it. So I think that, but it comes within the inclusive work, that there will be change, and let's just make it a good change.
And just to end, Berenice, do you feel like this change, you're seeing it happen? Are there different demands on the films that people want to buy from you?
I would say there are no rules. Coming back to the question of the filmmakers, I truly believe that it's the same question of the alliances. The filmmakers have to be able to basically be more political and choose their partners as well. I mean, this is something very important. At some point, they need to be able to share their vision with the people they want to share it with, because they will know that they will go in the right direction with the right people they want to work with. So it is very important. And of course, I mean, the producers will still have their word to say and so on, but we're coming back to the question of trust and transparency.
Thank you all, Anna, Tabitha, Berenice, Ted, for this amazing discussion and for giving us your time and being so generous. I hope the future's as bright. We'll all get to see what the new normal becomes. And thank you all for viewing. This has been a talk for the part of the panels of the London Film Festival.
Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you.